So today, lads, we're going to talk a little bit about the fourth quarter, and we're going to be talking a little bit about how the Atlanta Dream, in my opinion, just had no answer for Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever in that fourth quarter. And realistically, for quite a bit of the second half, they had no answer for an aggressive.
The Atlanta Dream's coaching staff simply had no answer for Caitlin Clark. Truthfully, they're far from the first to be left stunned by her brilliance on the court. When the final buzzer sounded on the Indiana Fever's commanding 99-82 win over the Dream, the disbelief was plain on the coaches' faces. They had no idea how to slow down the unstoppable force that is Caitlin Clark.
Let me say this about the Atlanta Dream. Y'all was hanging in there for 2 quarters, but then y'all ran out of gas. Cause you know why? The Indiana Fever ran y'all out y'all own building, and it was a sight to see. Y'all was huffing and puffing, trying to get some air and find some extra wind, and y'all couldn't.
This is exactly what happens when players make the mistake of calling her merely the 9th best point guard in the league. Caitlin Clark doesn't pay attention to the critics. She doesn't get tangled in the noise, and she certainly doesn't let anyone else's rankings dictate her worth. Instead, she lets her game speak volumes, and more often than not, she leads her team to victory with ease.
No surprise that the Indiana Fever looked best tonight when the offense was ran through Caitlin Clark. There's no surprise that the offense looked best tonight when we pushed the ball off of a make, pushed the ball off of a miss. There's no surprise that the Indiana Fever looked best tonight when Caitlin Clark was surrounded by players that don't have an ego, surrounded by players that said, I'm going to be MVP of the WNBA this year. You see how easy it is when you just let Caitlin play ball and others follow.
What we saw against the Atlanta Dream wasn't merely a basketball game. It was a statement. It was Caitlin Clark unleashed, finally given the freedom to play at her own electrifying pace and bend the entire game to her will. And look at how she dominated, a masterclass in control and influence. Though she tallied just 12 points, her true impact couldn't be captured by the box score. With 9 assists and total command over the game's tempo, she orchestrated every possession, leaving the Dream scrambling to keep up.
Made sure Caitlin Clark had the ball in her hands. She became the creator of offense. That's what we've been saying. Her and Aaliyah Boston, I believe it was 4 times, got the Stockton-Malone 2-man game working. Dantas got involved at one point with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin was still off on her shooting tonight.
Perhaps the most remarkable part was that Stephanie White finally let Caitlin Clark play her way. Fast, fearless, and with the entire offense flowing through her hands. She didn't even need to bury every three-pointer to make a statement that night. The Dream's coach thought he'd prepared for everything, but he hadn't planned for a fully unleashed Caitlin Clark running at full throttle. And by the time the game was over, it was clear he never stood a chance.
And people don't understand how good Jordan Canada is on defense. She was absolutely burning Jordan Canada. Canada could not stay in front of her. And that is a big thing. That is genuinely a big thing. That if you can't stay in front of her, it creates a space for everybody else. And there were some hockey assists, there was good ball movement, there was a lot of things. There was a lot of real positives when it came to Caitlin Clark.
You know what's truly beautiful about all of this? The Dream's coaching staff poured countless hours into studying film, crafting defensive schemes, and plotting every possible way to diminish Caitlin Clark's impact. They likely held meeting after meeting on double-teaming her, pressuring her the full length of the court, and making every possession a nightmare. But when the final buzzer sounded and the scoreboard blazed 99-82 in favor of the Fever, their coach was left utterly speechless. His team had just been systematically dismantled by a player the league supposedly ranks as only its 9th best point guard.
Obviously, tough game. I thought we had a good first half. We were really competitive. Second half we just had so many defensive breakdowns, and give them credit. They were getting extra possessions, and those extra possessions were turning into points just about every single time. So just valuing ending their possession. It's not enough to force a tough shot. We got to come down with the ball. And then, we had some defensive breakdowns that they made us pay for. They were able to extend the lead. And then at the end, we had to, do some gambling and do some things that really were not that equipped to do.
If you're enjoying this, subscribe. Because this isn't some fluke. Coaches all over the WNBA have been left baffled after facing Caitlin Clark. Remember when they thought the jump to the pros would humble her? Instead, she's not just adjusting. She's raising the bar for what excellence looks like. The best part? The same coaches who design entire defenses around stopping her, who guard her like she's prime Michael Jordan, somehow voted her only the 9th best guard in the league. They downplay her impact. They celebrate making life tough for her. Yet when the lights are brightest, they're the ones left looking foolish.
Able to really neutralize Caitlin Clark in the first half. And I know Caitlin Clark had 5 first half assists, but they were able to neutralize Caitlin Clark's impact on the game in that first half. And in the second half, regardless of the box score numbers, how Caitlin completely took over. So the big way they were able to neutralize Caitlin Clark, and I think it was almost an issue with Stephanie.
Against the Atlanta Dream, we witnessed something special. Stephanie White finally embraced what Iowa fans have known all along. Caitlin Clark is at her most dangerous when she's free to dictate the pace and flow of the game. For too much of this season, we've watched White try to shoehorn Clark into a system that didn't fit her extraordinary skill set. We've seen the frustration on Clark's face when she's stuck in the corner, watching others bring the ball up. But against the Dream, everything changed. White realized that trying to contain Clark's instincts is like trying to cage a hurricane. When you have a generational talent, you don't force her to adapt to your system. You build your system around her. And that's exactly what we saw unfold.
Clark sort of gaining her rhythm as the game went along, sort of returning to her form as the game went along, finding that pep in her step as the game went along, even though the shooting numbers were tour dates again, and she's got to find that shooting stroke at some point. Look, it can't go on all year, but you understand where some of those struggles come from when you deal with a quad injury and then a groin injury, and you're thrust back into the lineup and you're trying to find your way. But I do think it was the way that Clark found her way to the basket that was the difference in this game, really. That was what changed the dynamic.
The Dream coach could only watch as Clark ran the Fever's offense like a master conductor. She created opportunities out of nothing, threaded passes through invisible lanes, and forced Atlanta into constant adjustments just to keep up. Even when her three-pointers weren't dropping, she still controlled every part of the game. What made it even more impressive? How she lifted her teammates. That's the part the critics never mention. Clark doesn't just shine on her own. She makes everyone around her better.
Ride for Indiana and for Clark as well, who's had to fight through a lot of injuries. But I think the encouraging thing from Cece was the fight that she showed on the floor. Clearly, she's not quite at 100%, still working her way back, hasn't found her 3-ball yet. But what she did was attack. She used the physicality against the defenders by putting her head down and going to the basket. That opened things up for her playmaking, which of course is another genius aspect of her game. Once that started clicking, the Fever ran away with things. Sophie Cunningham was everywhere. Clark had it going with Aaliyah Boston again. Kelsey Mitchell was cooking. And all of a sudden, you look up and the Fever are lighting up the score.
When Clark plays her game, pushing the pace and creating in transition, the entire Fever roster becomes more dangerous. Kelsey Mitchell gets cleaner looks, Aaliyah Boston finds easier work in the post, and shooters like Sophie Cunningham are suddenly wide open for threes. The Dream coach had no answer for this version of Caitlin Clark because this version is simply unstoppable. When she's confident, controlling the tempo, and acting as the floor general who made her a household name at Iowa, she doesn't just look like a very good player. She becomes a truly transcendent one.
Handling Caitlin Clark early in that game, like they had 2 hands on her. They were fully getting into the we are grabbing her and we don't really care. That was their goal. Their goal was they were out there to maul Caitlin Clark. They had they had absolutely no intention of doing anything other than mauling Caitlin.
Nice all-around game from the Indiana Fever. And some may ask, well, Rhodes, do you feel better about Stephanie White? No, not at all. Because until she proves night in and night out she's willing to put the ball into Caitlin Clark's hand and let her be the creator and innovator on offense, I will not be sold. I will not be sold. The fact is, Caitlin's going to start knocking these shots back down at some point. And all of a sudden, her statistics are going to blow up.